Lately, been getting a lot of questions around what is the purpose of a teacher, the purpose of a coach or a pointer. And these questions are actually really good questions because they begin to delve into more of, do I have to? I guess the best way to start here is to just remind you that really you don't need anything. You don't need even a practice. Everything you've ever needed is already built in. It's right here in experience. Yet it does seem like a little bit of structure or some practice along the way can help us start to pay more attention to what's literal and what's obvious. That's kind of what we're looking at here. We could say that a pointer, one who points to the moon, coming from that classic Buddhist parable, that they essentially help point us to something that's obvious and here. In other words, a pointer is just another finger, maybe pointing at other fingers, pointing, ultimately pointing at the moon. And really you in this experience, not you as an identity, but you here now, the relational aspect, the verb, you, the everything you, the I am you, are the moon. We could say a pointer can provide some insight to potential blind spots, but that's a little bit inauthentic. It's a little bit disingenuous, mainly because everything that you've ever needed to see, you do see. It's important to take that type of responsibility to step into experience and realize that you're actually not missing anything, but there is some sort of complicity towards stepping away, some sort of complicity in obscuring your relationship with yourself and your reality. It's definitely within view, but there might be something that's telling you not to look. It's definitely something that you glance at here and there, but there might be some quick mechanisms that begin to take place that pull you away. The really painful truth for a lot of people along the way is to realize that we have absolute complicity in our lives. We are absolutely responsible for all of the aspects of what seems to arise and how we entertain these things and the relationship that we have. The responsibility isn't a blame, though. That's important to recognize. The responsibility is, how do I respond now? It's really just that fundamentally simple. It doesn't have a stretch of responsibility into some potential past event or a stretch of responsibility into some potential future event. Instead, it's how do I respond right here, right now? Now, of course, we cannot control pretty much any of this. We cannot control what shows up in this external reality. We cannot even control these thoughts, and we certainly cannot control these sensations. But we can start to recognize where we fall in the midst of all that, where this perspective or this perception of experience seems to arise, and that is something that we can call relationship. Working with a pointer helps us recognize our relationship. We could say in a really simplistic level that all practices, all structures along the way in the path are designed to help catalyze curiosity. There are other fingers pointing to the moon. The same thing goes for one who points, one who teaches. We can help catalyze curiosity. And even though it may seem like we see blind spots here and there, the point is, it's not actually a blind spot. It's something that you do see, but that you are turning a blind eye toward. Of course, you're experiencing all of this. You're feeling it all the time. You're in the midst of it all the time. And maybe a particular perspective or a particular structure of seeing it in a particular way might not be available to you in the moment, and a pointer can provide that. Ultimately, it's right here, staring you in the face. So, let's get real. There are no blind spots. There are just places that we refuse to look. There are no things that we're just not paying attention to but we have habitually attempted to essentially obscure that and fill that space with something else. This can be a sharp pill to swallow, yet if you rest with it and you really do sit with it, you will realize that this is true. And you will realize that ultimately you don't need anything or anyone else to step into this. It's always smacking you upside the head, so to speak. I do want to bring something else up, though, that there is something that we can call the lightness of pointing. And that's really kind of the crux of this video. Upon sitting with a pointer, we begin to oftentimes step into curiosity, and then we start to step into play. And most people will say, toward the end of a session, they will say, wow, I just feel so much lighter, of course, because in this particular environment, you have given yourself permission to step into a place of play and curiosity, and maybe you don't give yourself permission to do that in these other aspects of your existence, in these other environments where there are different conditions. But this will help reveal some aspects of identity for you. That really your identity is arising based on circumstances. That there is no singular identity there, even though it seems to come from the same space of observation. The things that show up are actually kind of custom tuned to the environment. There seems to be an identity for the work environment. There's a relationship identity for romantic relationships. There's a familial identity. There's a social identity. There's a public identity. All of these things. When we start to pay attention, we see that the only thing that seems to remain consistent is what we can call the space of observation, or the observer. From there, we begin to recognize that there's something else here that becomes really crucial, and that is the relationship to the experience. The thoughts that tell us that we have to, or that we're compelled to do something. We start to insert the wedge, as brought up in a past video, the wedge technique. And we start to see that we don't have to, that simply observing is enough, simply engaging is enough. So when it comes to the lightness of pointing, if you find yourself in a rut of what seems serious and not necessarily having a lot of engagement with curiosity and not really coming into contact with innocence, not really playing much, there can be a huge benefit to coming to a space into rest with one who points, because oftentimes that will start to pique our curiosity. It'll start to get us to come in contact and to touch this innocence, this truest nature that makes us all one. We share this innocence. There is no identity there. There is no separation there. And it seems to manifest itself as this experience that we call play. So if you find yourself in a rut, if you find yourself in a stuck place, this is usually a good opportunity to approach someone who points, approach someone who teaches, and sit and allow yourself to become curious again. And then use the momentum of that to continue engaging in your life in fresh, novel, spontaneous, and mysterious ways, we could say. But also, one more thing. Don't wait till things get too challenging before you engage with curiosity, or before you go to someone who points or a teacher, because at that point, the rut is already essentially established. Stay really close to experience. Notice how things are unraveling and unfolding, and also pay attention to how curiosity is peaking. And if there isn't a lot of curiosity in your existence, if there seems to be a lot of certainty, but maybe you're not in a rut, this is also a good time to approach a pointer, to set up a session. You don't have to necessarily dive into some sort of darkness before screaming for help. Instead, this unfolding can kind of take a tone of its own, a rhythm that seems to be a lot more effortless. When approaching a pointer, you will find that there's a lot of lightness in that experience. So if it's something that you're curious about, you can always set up a session here, or if you want recommendations, there's plenty of other wonderful pointers out there. And if this seems like something that will be useful for you along the path, I definitely highly recommend that you approach someone so that you can begin investigating on a more immediate and intimate level. And with that, if there is lightness in your experience, continue to entertain that, because that seems to be a crucial aspect of this. Play to curiosity to innocence. That's really what we're doing here. So, without being too cliche, I will say, stay curious, my friends. Stay curious.